are huge. You know, there are certain things that we hear and we have an emotional reaction to it, and it makes it very, very difficult to attend to the message. So your trigger words can be used in the paragraph. Read it out loud to yourself and then let me know what happened. So maybe some of these are your hot buttons, you know, things that just really get under your skin. Anytime someone says to you, you never or you always, those are called absolutes. And I had one of my favorite professors in my undergrad. He would say that absolutes should not be used because they're untruthful. Because if you say to someone, you never, the likelihood of them having never done something, slim to none. You always, blah, 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 the likelihood that they have never once not done that, very slim to none. So he would always talk about how absolutes are untruthful. So if someone starts something, you know, you never or you always, does that automatically get you, you know, a little bit riled up? What about know-it-all attitudes? People who are convinced that they have it all figured out and they know everything and they want you to know they know everything. Individuals who smoke while talking to you, if you are a non-smoker, that might be something that really gets under your skin. The words shut up. I know for me, I was not allowed to say that growing up, and people that say that, it's still to this day just gets, I don't know, it gets my dander up for some reason. I just think that's really disrespectful. And actually, as an aside, like being shushed is another thing for me. I've been told my whole life, for as long as I can remember, that I speak loudly, which I personally don't think I do, but you know, self-awareness. And I remember my mom when I was little, I'd be talking in a restaurant or we'd be talking somewhere and she would go, shh. And that just used to make me so livid. And so, like, my husband knows, like, if he, you know, wants me to be quiet, he says, can you talk softer, please? Because when we were first married, if he would shush me, oh my goodness, like, no, please do not do that. I do not like that. So that is certainly a hot button for me. Being ignored. What about when you know that someone is just blatantly ignoring you? I know for me, bad grammar and bad spelling, oh my goodness. We went to a church for a very long time, and the pastor was notorious for mispronouncing words, and it made me insane. When I read things, if people have misspelled things or their grammar's incorrect, it's the first thing that I notice, and then I lose the whole message because it's all I can think about. What about you never listen? Since we're speaking about listening, you know, when someone says to you, you never listen to me, is that something that really gets under your skin? Obscene language. I know for me, cussing is a huge thing. I do not cuss. I have never been in a family with people that cussed, so obscene language is a huge thing for me. Whining. That, I know that bothers a lot of people. It bothers me. And what about people that might say to you, what you should do is, oh, that kind of goes back to the know-it-all attitudes. Even being interrupted, you know, if you are with a chronic interrupter, and you know, you get 4 words into a sentence and they interrupt you, and then you get 4 words into the next sentence, they interrupt you, does that really get under your skin? So those are not necessarily trigger words, but things that can push our buttons and make us focus on those issues rather than the message. So how do we improve our skills? What are ways to improve our listening, comprehension, and responding skills? Dale Carnegie, who wrote How to Win Friends and Influence People, said, focus first on being interested, not interesting. And I thought that was very important and very significant for us, because we often tend to want to communicate about ourselves. Let's face it, people love to talk about themselves. So if we can focus first on being interested, where does our focus lie if we're being interested on the other person? That's our other orientation right there. If we're focusing on being interesting, we're focusing on ourselves. And that's self-serving, and that's meeting our own needs, and we cannot be effective listeners and communicators if there's not a reciprocal give and take of who the focus is on. And then another quote I like, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So it's not about explaining how knowledgeable we are or how, much we can offer to someone. It's, I want you to know that I care. And how I show you I care is I listen. And I'm focused on you and I'm attending to your message and I'm trying to understand it, and then I'm going to respond and get clarification. And there are 5 steps to becoming a more other-oriented listener that I want to go through with you. So first, stop, look, and listen. And we will actually go through what those mean. Ask questions and reflect content by paraphrasing, which we've practiced at this point. So when we say stop, look, and listen, stop what? Basically everything. When you listen, either you're focusing on the message or you're not. So we truly have to get in the mindset of being present, which means we stop our thoughts, we stop our behaviors, we stop our actions, we stop our feelings, we stop everything that can interfere with focusing on the message. People prefer listeners who are focused and who communicate that they're devoting their full attention to them when they speak. Which that makes sense, because people prefer to know that someone is giving them their full attention. If you know that someone is only half interested, you don't really want to speak to them anymore. You want someone that's going to listen and hear you. And you can learn to stop mental distractions, which will therefore improve your listening comprehension. So it's really a mental, cognitive decision that you make. I'm going to stop allowing other things to interfere. Okay, look. So you stop all your thoughts, then you look. Your nonverbal messages, and we'll talk a lot about this, like I said, but your nonverbal messages are very powerful, and it's a primary way that we communicate our feelings, emotions, and attitudes. Eye contact signals that you're focusing your interest and attention on the speaker. So eye contact is your best nonverbal communication that you're listening. And be cautious. Don't be distracted by nonverbal cues that prevent you from interpreting the message correctly. So if you're making eye contact, don't allow that to become a distraction where you're focusing on every little nonverbal thing that the person's communicating, because then you're not truly listening to the words as well. You need to kind of do that, simultaneously, where you're paying attention to nonverbals and verbals, but don't allow the nonverbals to be so distracting or such a focus that you stop listening to what's being actually said. Okay, so stop, look, listen. Listening is more than remembering facts. It's a search for comprehension of the essence of the message. So what I'd like you to do is consider, what is your goal for listening? So learning. If your goal is to remember, you're going to focus on the details and summarize it in your mind to recall later. So if you are listening to this lecture and you're thinking, what she says may end up being on the final, your goal for listening would be learning, because you want to remember it, you want to focus on the details and summarize it so that it goes in long-term memory. If your goal for listening is enjoyment, then your focus is going to be different. If it's for evaluation, you're going to be more critical, more analytical. What do I think about this? What's my impression of this? If you're listening for enjoyment, it's just, I really like listening to your story, or I really want to get to know you, so I want you to share, whatever you choose to share with me. If your goal is to provide support, then remembering details are not so critical when someone needs your empathy. And, that makes sense. If you're attending to someone's needs and emotions, it's not nearly as important that you are focused on every little nitty-gritty detail. This allows you to implement the goal of breaking down your listening barriers. And practice makes perfect, so practice listening to challenging material to hone your skills. You have to keep in mind that perfect practice makes perfect. So if you only ever listen when there's nothing challenging going on or nothing that makes you really work hard at it, your skills can never fully be developed. So it's almost important to challenge yourself sometimes to hone your skills and make sure that you really are able to do it in the most difficult situations. So if you ask questions, that allows you to clarify the sequence of events. It allows you to get definitions of words or meanings that are unclear, and it also allows you to get the other person's feelings and emotions. So, what questions might have been asked in the last exercise? So, when you're thinking about your paraphrasing exercise, if you had said that 3 to 5 sentences to someone else, what might they have asked to get clarification, to get definitions, to get your feelings? So it's important to consider how questions